Talk about VR, my limited experience in it, because that's kind of all you can have at the moment, I think.
I'll be your clicker.
Also, Bellingham's sweet. Way cooler than I thought. Where did the rumor come from that this was taking place in like an abandoned mine? Everyone in Vancouver is like, I think it's in a mine?
Is that Facebook event picture?
Yeah. This is sort of an amphitheater, is it not? Yeah, okay, so we can go to my slide. All right. I'm GordonMcGladdery. I run a Shell and the Tit Audio in Vancouver, which is kind of a one-man studio with outsourcing here and there. Lots of you in here, actually. So I'm still pretty new. I've been working for 3 years in the industry. I did just finish my first year of incorporation. We sponsored the donuts. But I have done some stuff. So I did Rogue Legacy. That was my first. I started that while I was still in school, and that kind of kickstarted my whole career, really. Working on Duelist still. Parkitect is still in development. I worked with Matt on Invisible Ink.
If you need sci-fi doors, you should got.
Mostly doors. Yeah. Mostly one door sound. I was there for 6 months. I'm doing Opos, which is a game being published by Devolver. That's coming out pretty soon, actually. We're trying to be content complete by the end of the month. And I have done piles of outsourcing for Power Up Audio, which is confusing because I'm still on their website. I look like they're employed, but they're not. But we're best buds, best sound friends. So that's all my flat screen, boring games. But I have done some VR stuff because I've been a big nerd for binaural audio since I found out it existed. So I did kind of get in on the ground floor of the new wave of virtual reality. So the most exciting project by far is Fantastic Contraption. That's what I'm going to be talking about a lot. I just got nominated for an IGF, which is pretty cool. Not for sound, but... and I've done some commercial with 3Ms. I just noticed that. So there's actually a lot of commercial work in VR right now. And I'll talk more about what I think the opportunities that exist in VR are, because there's actually a shitload of work available in VR that nobody is snapping up. So we've done some Horse and Cheese, Thunderhead, and Whirlpool. It's all for a company in the UK called Hammerhead. And those have mainly been linear experiences where we're kind of I'm doing all the binaural stuff in DAW, and we're just kind of trying to trick people, because if they turn their head, it's not interactive. But we're working towards that. And next slide. So, who has tried the Vive? Sweet, nice. So everybody knows that it's like awesome, and and that it's not like it's hard to explain. Like there are a lot of things that pop up that you wouldn't expect. There were two things that I expected would be the case and were the case. Like after I started using it quite a few times, and that is the main one is that binaural is a necessity. Like a VR experience without binaural is just like a waste of time. And like the nice thing about that is that it's really easy to explain that to devs. So getting resources for VR games is pretty easy compared to traditional games, because you're like, yeah, this is in front of you now and you can look around, but now that you can do this and it all feels like it's there, the sound needs to have the exact same depth as the visuals. Easy sell, like it's much easier to get your middleware demands met. And budgetary demands met. It's pretty nice. And then the other thing was what? I don't remember.
Next?
Yes. Non-diegetic music is weird now. Which is exciting in some ways, because I do about 50-50 composition and sound effects. And as a composer, I'm like, oh, less music, that's too bad. As a sound designer, I'm like, sweet, we're pulling the music into the world now. And suddenly we have to be a lot more creative with how we do our music. And I'll do more on that later. Next slide. Of course, there were way more things that I thought that I didn't expect at all that were suddenly very, very obvious, and even more important than those last two in a lot of cases. And the first thing is that everything matters all of a sudden. Like, of course, we always think that as sound people, we want like all the fine details we can get all the time, but now the user actually cares. So your prioritization is completely thrown out of whack. So for Fantastic Contraption, it's like there are big moments like where you beat the level, there's a big explosion, and you're like, okay, that normally we put like a lot of effort into making that key, but now it's just as much focus has to be put into like all the tiny, stupid little things. Because everybody, as soon as they're in the Vive and they're able to move around and there's all this detail that they can get their face right into, they're shoving their face into things to look at things really closely, you need to cover that. Like everything has to be covered. It's ridiculous. We've got these little tiny tassels on the bottom of the controller, and if I think it was any other traditional 3D game, we'd be like, screw that, we're not covering that, nobody cares. But everybody that plays this game is like, and I was like, oh, I have to do a sound for that now. And then the artist made like 30 different tassels. And I haven't covered it yet, but I'm like, oh, well, it looks dumb when they're all making the same sound now, so we're going to have to do 30 tassels with 10 variations each for the stupid controller keys. And it's just as important as all the big moments, so it's almost like the whole playing field is just like leveled. Like, big stuff is cool, but the small stuff is just as important. We'll do the next one. So the distance fall off, I'm sure it's always important. Like I don't have nearly the experience in 3D that a lot of the people here have. But now it's like, it has to sound like it's this far away. And if it doesn't sound like it's this far away, if that sounds like it's this far away, it's weird. And so you're tweaking your distance fall off forever. It's still not perfect in mine at all. But the plugins help a lot. And we'll go to the next one. So mixing on headphones is suddenly allowable and probably even expected until the 3D, like real space 3D sound technology gets fully developed. And it's possibly going to be standardized. The Valve keeps saying maybe, maybe not, as far as if they're going to include headphones with the consumer Vive. I kind of hope they do, because it would make mixing, like that decision would just make itself, you just mix on the headphones that it's getting shipped with. But as sound people, we want to be able to choose our own, and a lot of users will too, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Next. And one of the other things I did not expect is that we must find a way to interact with other people in the space. This is a very Vive-specific talk because it's just so much better than everything else. The biggest fight in VR right now is to not make it this seclusionary experience, if that's even a word. And you want to be able to interact with your friends in the room watching you, because watching somebody do virtual reality stuff is pretty entertaining.
Do you have any of the mixed reality streaming stuff queued up during your presentation to kind of show that off at all?
No, but we can just go on YouTube and look at it.
Could you fire one up? I think it's the best example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. You want to go to Colin Northway's channel?
Which I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is the Fantastic Contraption. They're doing a mixed reality for kind of
it might be Sarah Northway.
Collaborating with their game.
I think it's Sarah's.
And it just it shows the environment. It brings people into the environment.
Yeah, the Northways have a nice big apartment, and they've green screened the entire living room. So the floor, the walls, everything. Sarah's channel. Go to videos. Hey, she looks smarter than me. Work on that too. Yeah, check it out. So this is we've only done this for 2 weeks running now, but just within Unity and I think with some of the Vive tech, they're actually able to give it certain depth parameters, so things can go behind you, you can go in front of stuff.
So we got 6. We got wheels. Stick them together.
Nice tabs. Yeah, like those tabs.
And And
I think they're in that
wheels
little-
turn, and the idea is to make a machine that can actually move and accomplish a goal. So the goal is to get this little protocol. If you don't want something, chuck it up. The goal is to get this little goal ball here into the goal, which you can see it on the catch over here. The goal is this like big pink rectangle area. You'll see when we get here. So we need to get from here, where we're starting, to over here. Well, I'll continue the face. To over here, where the goal is. And there's all this junk in the way. So when I start the actual physics simulation, and I start timing,
Anyways, yeah, I guess that's
all
a
of
good
the
idea.
little junk is going to fall down.
So that has been super cool. That's been super cool. So that was Sarah Northway. She's she's married to Colin Northway. Colin Northway is the creator of the original Fantastic Contraption and also the Vive redo of it. So she's got the headset on. She doesn't know where we are on the couch, but like it's a fun game to hang out with people and kind of collaborate on. And I haven't done this yet.
You're watching her performance on the television
Yes.
in the room, right?
Yeah. So we know exactly what's going on, what she's doing. But she can't see us, and she can't really hear us. If she wants to be using sound, she can't hear us. So we have to find a way to inject other people in the environment into her environment. And we'll talk about my ideas on that in a second. Okay. This one's it's pretty high tech. I don't think it's quite doable yet. Or someone can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just a couple days ago sent an email to the 3Dception guys to see what their progress on this is like. But I want to get real-time reflections happening with the actual user voice, which we can do with the Wise source input plugin. But I think that's it'll be just for mostly the baked-in stuff. I want it to be like the physics objects in the environment. I want you to be able to talk and hear how close it is to you. Or because if you're in a dark room and like you put your hand up next to your ear, you can tell that there's a hand there, just because the ambient sound is interacting with it. That's going to be really, really, really important for a fully immersive experience.
Do you want to do that on games where voice input from the player isn't even a mechanic at all, but just for the sake of having them as they talk,
Yeah.
using it, immerse themselves?
Yeah, I think that should be like a baked-in feature almost. Like that should just be a thing.
And it's
Like
like an-
you should be in the world as soon as you put the headset on.
Okay, cool.
And does the Vive have a microphone like right in the
The,
headset?
the Vive Pre does have a microphone. I haven't tested it yet. But the Northway just got it. It's a tiny pinhole though, so I don't have very high hopes.
So could you use that for, pass through in the living room the same way the camera's supposed to help bring in augmented stuff at the same time, but if you wanted to interact with people in the room?
Yeah, like I want to be able to grab people from the room too, but I don't think we can do that with that mic,
Okay.
right? So I want to put the user in the space. I also want to put the people in the room in the space. I'm not quite sure how to do that. If we're going to have to use, is it Ambisonics, the 3D recording?
Oh yeah, you were just mentioning how Sarah would be able to hear you if she was immersed with the sound and had the earplugs in, but there's now a front-facing little pinhole mic kind of thing.
Yeah.
The camera was meant to bring living room objects in selectively too.
Yeah. She could still hear you talking and stuff.
Yeah.
But I want them to be physical objects in the world. But I haven't done it yet, so this is all conjecture. We can move on. Last thing, dynamic range is back, kind of, I think, because it's 100% headphones. We're emulating the world, which has a very wide dynamic range, depending on what headphones they ship with. I mean, like no headphones are actually perfectly emulating the real world, but there's kind of a catch to that, and we'll go into that later. Okay, so there's a long way to go, which is good for business. There's like a lot of stuff to do for VR that it's a lot of work, which is awesome. It's really been interesting being on the cutting edge of something and having no resources to turn to at all. It's pretty slow going sometimes. So there are a few things that I said sort of on that it's like not a full point. And it has a lot to do with, we're gonna have to ease the users into this VR experience when they're used to, where people are used to a framework of traditional media, and they're gonna wanna see some of that in VR media. And that's going to detract from what I think is a fully immersive VR experience for quite a while, just to make it easier for people. And they are the non-diegetic music thing. So this has especially come up with my commercial clients, where I'm like, you know what? There probably shouldn't be a score, because like, where's it coming from? It's just, this is something, they're a great composer and they're making this up in their head. It detracts from the virtual reality experience, but try telling that to an advertiser and they're like, no. Like, put out an ad with no music, are you crazy? So here's just, I like this piece, but it's not a good example of VR. So this is a thing we did for a company called Thunderhead. If you want to go to like a minute. Do we have audio? Yeah. So, like it's the densest mix ever. It's like really loud sounds, and music was just like, they're like, make the music louder, make the music louder. And I was like, it's so cool. But it was not a good VR experience, I don't think, because it's not about the details. There's an advertisement right now, yeah, I listened to it too many times. But it's a cool experience, but for a while we're going to be just companies are going to be just transplanting traditional media experiences into VR. And it's from a sound perspective, it's not going to be perfect for quite a while, because there's going to be this easing in phase. Yeah.
And with that, so the visuals are 360, but the audio is just stereo?
Yeah. That company just didn't quite have the tech set up yet. And they move so fast with the ads, it's like there isn't really time to get like middleware plugins hooked in and everything. But I'm working on it, because I do work with them a lot. And we'll get there. I have to do a lot of learning as well, because I usually work in Unity, they're using Unreal. So I have to relearn all the implementation steps and stuff. And dynamic range is the same thing. People and this is almost on an individual per asset level. Like, people are used to movie sounds. Right now, VR is not so convincing that you were like completely in another world. It's still entertainment. It still feels like entertainment. So everything does still need to be hyper real. And this is kind of a problem with true binaural, because air doesn't treat sound very kindly, and we have been making our media sound, better than real life for quite a while. So a lot of the time when you listen to like a true binaural filter, and you A/B it between the dry and the filtered, you're like, man, the binaural sounds like ass. So there's I'm doing a lot of compression, not in Wise, but I'm compressing my assets a lot, because you still want all your details to come out, and you still want them to be kind of a bit louder, but still be following the correct attenuation curve and stuff. So it's not like we're free of compression by any means. Not that I don't ever want to be, but it's not just black and white by any means. Which I just said, so not too much binaural. I'm considering maybe even routing some high end from my main asset set to a separate bus, just to maintain some of the clarity that you lose through the air, just for basically to benefit the user. Okay, sweet, thanks for all the problems. What do we do? So binaural audio, there are a lot of available plugins. I'm using 3Dception. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's an excellent article on designingsound.org that you should check out if you want to know what's out there. I haven't done thorough tests of all of them. I simply haven't had time. But I am enjoying 3Dception a lot. It's fairly convincing. And the guys are awesome to work with, quite responsive. For the music, so this is one of the coolest things we're doing with Contraption right now. An example of how we're ditching traditional score. I did have a traditional score in. I got rid of it the other day, and I'm never going to put it back. Is we have turned all the building objects into musical instruments. So the rods that you can stretch are basically contact instruments, where when it's short, it's a high note, and you lengthen it to make it longer. They're all tuned to C. They're all velocity sensitive. So you can basically set up these xylophones and play your machine, and at some point you'll actually be able to make like music boxes out of the contraptions, which is super sweet. And it wasn't my idea, though. But
You're making it happen, man.
yeah, I'm making it happen. And I think I have a video of that. Yeah, so we have to turn this way up. My mix is super low right now. So I just recorded this last night. Doppler is like really huge on the water rods right now, and I love it. The tones?
Yeah.
No, I printed them all out. I think they could have been. I should have messed around with the synth.
types of sounds they are, you could totally make.
Yeah, totally did. So yeah, that's going to be a ton of fun. Like you could do that for hours, just like sound of music. So that's how we're doing it. I think there's going to be a million other ways to pull the soundtrack out of just the playing all the time in your ears into the world, and that's going to be a lot to do with sound design as well. Like you're really going to be scoring the environment with sound design. It's going to be awesome. Okay, everything else matters as much as everything else. That for me has just been doing a lot of work, like tons of variations, attention to detail, everything. Like I'm pushing, and since like the freedom of being indie is like, I don't have a memory budget. Like, I'm just gonna push it until somebody cries. and like, until the game doesn't work anymore, I'm gonna put as much shit in as I can. Which is a very freeing thing that not everyone can do, I know. But I think it's something that you can do in VR pretty freely because devs are they're so much more willing to give audio resources. Because most people still don't know binaural exists. And when you tell them about it, it still blows their minds. Problems with the distance fall off. Short answer is just tweak it forever. It's super finicky, and even like the defaults, even after you have your world scaling correct, the defaults still don't work. And also it does have to do with like some things you want to have a shorter fall off on because maybe it's an annoying sound, like my tassels. I've given them a shorter fall off because you don't want to hear them all the time. You want to hear it when people are really paying a lot of attention to it. So that's a nice way of controlling focus. So some things and that's a parameter we're actually going to implement is when somebody's looking at something for a long time, like it may not play a sound much, but if we can tell somebody's staring at it, we're going to bring that sound in, which will help hopefully tame our voice count a bit too. So my ideas of way to interact with other people in space, I think we kind of got along with, but we need to, and just, I have no solution, but everybody put your brains to work on thinking of a way, I don't know if we can do it with mid-side mics or something that can just place people, that can pick out voices in the room separate them, and then inject them back into the world as game objects. It would be super sweet, because it's cool enough to be able to hear your friends talking. It's way cooler if you can hear your friends like harassing you as like talking flowers in the world. That would be amazing. I don't think it's that difficult. Like, if we can get the voices, putting them in the game is easy, but like getting the voices, I don't really know how to do that. But that'll be really wicked. Real-time reflections. I think I went over my ideas for that. Just though, I think I can do it with was source input plugin and a nice reflection plugin. Okay, I'm kind of done. So VR requires a whole new perspective, reprioritization of what assets are important, and things to end. Okay, this is like my changes perspective on a grand scale. Is like there's so much work in VR right now. Like all the demos I see tons of fantastic demos. The sound is garbage. If you just surf through them, grab a couple, do a mock-up, and you'll have more work than you know what to do with. I can almost guarantee it. Especially if you can just exhibit that you know how to work with one or two of the binaural plugins and use your middleware. And I'm finding I'm doing a lot more work in Unity as well this time. I think it's just because the team I'm working with are kind of powerhouses and they know how to do everything. So I'm intimidated as hell. And so, yeah, you can start training yourself on sound for VR for free, basically. Other than the initial headset, but really, I haven't used a headset for any of my commercial stuff. I've just been winging it. But the Oculus SDK is free. You can mess around with the sound plugin in Fmod for free, but you can't build to a game with it, but you can at least start messing around with it. And as we all know, Fmod and Wise are free to play around with as well. And yeah, questions, if there's time. One question.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
So, it doesn't seem like your games are using explosions or anything. I'm curious if
No.
you mess with HDR at all.
No, not yet. That's the thing that I'm enjoying about having this increase in dynamic range. I'm doing no ducking and contraption right now whatsoever, and the need hasn't existed yet.
How about the delay over time? Like in games right now, there's an explosion,
Yep.
you gotta have the time together, but now all of a sudden it's more real.
That's taken care of by 3D Section. They've got a delay. So as long as your world scaling is correct, then your speed of sound delay is compensated.
And that feels right because
Yeah,
it's
it
real
does.
time compared to a game.
Yeah, it does feel pretty good.
So, I mean, do you think you're getting ahead of yourself in terms of your expectations for how quickly we're going to jump across this uncanny valley you're running into with VR, like some of your voice reflection stuff? If you had to say
Oh, hell yeah.
what the most important thing you want to see in VR audio in the near accomplishable future is, what would you say? Because a lot of that stuff seems real nice to have, but I mean, it's going to be a little...
I think putting other people in the game is definitely harder to do than getting the player's voice in the game first, and then getting the player's voice in the game just with even baked in reverbs and stuff, like that'll be great. The thing that is because 3D Section already has room, like they have room, like you can put reverb rooms in, but I think you have to do it first. I don't think we can attach it to objects yet. So that's what I'm waiting to hear from the Bash Dot. So getting the voice in, I think will be easy. Getting it to actually interact with dynamic objects, I think is going to be a little tricky, but we'll see. And oh yeah, the other thing Luca has mentioned to me is like we should get you might still need a subwoofer even though you're on headphones for big moments.
So just a question on your mix strategy. Are you using reverb in the same way as you would in the 2D game, or?
Right now I am, but I don't know if that's the right way. I'm using so little because you're on a floating island. Technically, there would be really no reverb. There's nothing to bounce off of. So I'm using very, very, very minimal reverb. Can I do one more?
Me first. So you mentioned the possibility of basically locking vision and then enhancing audio in some way.
Yeah.
Is there currently anything for like an audio vision like a visual cone already, or is that all taken care of by 3Dception? Things that are
if-
behind you are
Oh,
lower
is there?
volume, or-
3Dception is doing the binaural stuff.
Yeah.
As far as bringing up the volume when something is focused on, we'll be doing that in code. That'll be a custom feature. Sweet. Okay, look up super fast.
When you say that you're thinking about considering writing your high end for another, I mean, you're basically trying to deliver still a sweetened version of reality, even though you're going for more realism than normal. Do you
Yeah.
think that's just because that's what our expectations of kind of entertainment are, or is there a case for games coming out in VR that are really trying to cleave to realism that might set the tone? Like, do you think that it's going to sort of shift what we're looking for a bit as this tech takes place? Or
I think that's for cushioning. That's going to be for cushioning the user from traditional media for a
like
while.
change.
And because like it's still not, it's so far from perfect. Like you're in headphones, they're probably not that good. I can hear all the traffic on Broadway from my Vive setup. Like it's still like it's immersive, but it's not that immersive.
Yeah.
So we still need to just spice things up a bit.
And the algorithms for the processing is still getting started too, right?
Yeah, they're not perfect yet either. Yeah, so, a long way to go. Anyways, thanks a lot. There's his info.